Welcome to Anthology Training. In this series of videos, we're going over the new features in Anthology version 9.6. In this second video, we are going to go over some of the new bits for vendors, purchase orders, the send to PO area, the new last received field, some changes to the QuickReceive tool, and a new option for having your draft book fare units be included in your on-hold numbers. Specifically in this video, we're using version 9.6.59. That's as of April 2nd. So the first item I want to go over is the vendor discount setup option. When you're in Master Files Vendors, when you go to your particular vendor record, there is a Disc Schedules or Discount Schedules tab. And in this area, there's now a new line button or an F5 new line button. So once I click on the new line button, or I could do right-click new line, either way, but when I do the F5 new line button, I can indicate if I'm going to do a quantity-based discount schedule. So for Ingram, let's say it's if you buy 10 units at the very least, they'll do that typical 40%. Oops, 10 units and 40%. And maybe at 25 units, they do 41%. And so forth. So that new line button lets me go in and add new lines, new discount schedule lines to the what we call discount schedule, where once I'm in my draft purchase order, the system's going to look and see, okay, I have 10 units or more. Go ahead and show the possible automatic 40%. If there's 25 units or more, show that 41% and so forth. So that's just a quick little addition. We added a new button, an F5 new line button on this screen for you. Don't forget to F10 save your changes too. The next area I want to go over is we've added a couple of new fields to purchase orders. So if we go to inventory control, purchase orders, for you that are, if you've just upgraded, when you first get into the draft purchase order area to the details tab, any new field that we've added will show up initially off to the far right at the very end. So your screen when you first come in may have the pub date all the way to the far right, as well as the newer item UPC field, maybe all the way to the far right as well. But you can see that you can drag and drop these columns into a different sequence. So I'm just going to bump my pub date field further to the left, and all I did was a single left click, held that left mouse button down, kept holding it down on that column header. See how it turns blue a little bit? And just while I'm still holding the mouse, I'm dragging to the next position that I want it in. And then once I let go of the mouse button, it drops into that place. So that for the moment, at least while I'm working for the next little while here, it will stay with that particular display. If I do want to preserve that setting so that it's maintained the next time I get into Anthology, and this is a per workstation, per user setting. So perhaps your buyer over on Station 3 likes to see their screens in a little different sequence than maybe your receiver over on Station 4. But if I want these column sequences to stick, it doesn't really matter what area of the program in this function works for a lot of different areas. But if I want this column sequence to stay where it's at, I can go up to my Tools menu. And in Tools is Maintain Views. And then under Maintain Views is the Set as Default for Current Form. So using that option, I can save this particular grid view, the sequence, to my preference for my particular user and my particular workstation. Later on, if I decide, no, I did not want to do that, I want to reset it back to the way it was, you can simply go back to the Tools menu, Maintain Views, and do the Restore Defaults. As well, in relation to purchase orders, we've made some enhancements to the send to PO form, the pick PO form that appears. So if I am, say, on a purchase order and I go to my actions menu, there are the options for move or copy to another PO. So I'll pick the move to another PO. And this window that pops up here, the choose PO to move items to, you'll see there are some additional fields off to the far right, giving you a few more details to be able to decide, which order was it exactly I wanted to move these items to. That same pick PO window has also been updated from other areas such as master files inventory when you do the F12 send PO. Same thing there. When you do the send, you'll get that pop-up window where you'll have some additional fields to help isolate the particular order that you were looking for. And in fact, now that we're over on the inventory screen, in fact, let me just go back to that. So under master files inventory, the next field that I wanted to point out is now in the inventory, there is a new last received field. Now, previously you've had the first received field, and depending on your column sequences, how you like to see things, your first received field may be about in the middle, it may be further over to the right, but here now is the new last received field so that I can see very quickly side by side what range of dates that item was active in my store. And again, when you first get into your master files list tab or master files inventory on the list tab, be sure to scroll over to that far right and you'll see any newer fields that have been added over time. And then you can drag and drop the sequence to whatever fits your need. And then using that same tools, maintain views, set as default, you can preserve that setting for your workstation and your particular user. The next bit that I want to talk about is the QuickReceive area. We've added a couple of better search options and a newer option for any vendor. So if I go over to my QuickReceive area, I've got a couple of them started already just as an example. So on the QuickReceive screen, one of the changes we've made is this column right here used to be labeled as PO number, which isn't really correct. This column at least, this is the actual QuickReceive memo. But down at the bottom now in the search by area, I also have now a QuickReceive number and a PO number search by so that I can search for an item either based on the QuickReceive it was done on to wrap things up or on the original PO number or the ISBN or vendor too. So those couple little things we've added to that view. And then the sort of the really interesting, big, exciting part here is this newer Any Vendor option. So once you've got your QuickReceive created, and in this case, let's say I've got a large order coming in bits and pieces that ultimately is going to be for Macmillan, but maybe I had submitted the individual purchase orders through PubNet directly to maybe Forge or Holt or Minotaur or Tor Books. So I can now, using this Any Vendor option right there, on any given QuickReceive, if it's checked for any vendor, as I scan in or type in those ISBNs, it's going to go out and look and see, is that ISBN on any open receiving memo, regardless of what vendor is on that parent order. I can tell it to receive against that parent order within this QuickReceive area. So in this case, I've got the Any Vendor checked. Let me just save that change. I'll get out of scan mode for the moment, and we'll add a note that this is for Forge Books, Holt, say Minotaur, and Tor Books. And that's just my own personal note. It's not really critical at this point. I'll go ahead and save that for a moment. But let me show you for a moment over in the open receiving memo that I do have a small set of open receiving orders that I'm waiting for books to come in. And in this case, I submitted these orders through PubNet, through Anthology, but I directed each one at their specific publisher. I wanted to go right to each one of those houses. I could have gone right to Macmillan directly, but in this case, I can also go to these smaller houses that the different big publishers or big distributors will have. So you can see I've got these 4 different open orders. Each one has its own set of ISBNs. And in the inventory record, when I do, say, master file inventory, or right-click and do master file, you'll see on each one of those titles, when I was putting them into my inventory, I took a few moments and properly defined that Holt Paperback is the actual publisher, but I may initially want to have it distributed or ordered from Macmillan, and barring being able to get it from those guys, my last choice might be to go to Ingram. So it just depends on how your buyer likes to do things, if they prefer to go to publishers directly first, or if you want to have them go right to the bigger distributors, wholesalers first. Either way works. But this new quick receive option is now going to let me go into one general quick receive memo and receive against these 4 different titles, basically in one big pile, because at the end of all this, I'm going to get one big invoice from Macmillan and have to pay Macmillan directly, even though I've ordered separately from these smaller guys from the houses themselves. So I've got a list of these ISBNs that were on those orders. So let's go back to the inventory control, back to quick receive. And you can see I've already created my Macmillan general order. I've already got it set to be any vendor. So now I'm going to go ahead and start scanning in those items. And I'm already in scan mode by default when I first get back in here. So I'll put in that first title. And you can see there's the title space station down. And one other field we've added here is there's now also the, not just the original parent PO number, but now also the vendor on that parent PO, the orig PO, so that you'll be able to kind of quickly look through that list and see if there's a title that, no, that shouldn't be on an Ingram one. I'm looking for the tour books order that it was on initially. So we'll go through and let's scan in a couple of more units here. There's all 5 units of that title. And we'll scan in the next one. Well, there's all 4 of those guys. Let me grab one more so we have a couple of different examples. Let's grab one more here so we have another line. In fact, I'll receive all of those units. Okay, so now I've got these different titles in here, and you can see that even though I'm going to do a quick receive against the overall Macmillan vendor, I've now got each one of these titles that were from different orders. So these 2 titles, the 10 innings and the archaeology title, were originating from parent PO number 5877, which is a Holt order. And then these other 2 titles, Space Station and Spine of the Dragon, were coming from original parent order 5875, which is a tour books. I've got a few other titles that I've got as well. Let me just do one more scan here, and we'll add in a couple of other items. So you can see there's that a third one, which is coming from a Forge Books PO number 5878. In fact, let me get out of scan mode. I'll go ahead and just say, yep, I got all 5 of those units, or maybe I only got 4 of those units, and I'm not quite sure what the status of that last 5th unit is. I'll just say, for the moment, I'm just going to assume it's back ordered. Enter line, make sure you F10 save your change. And now as I go through and finalize this batch of receiving this quick receive, I'll do those same steps of going to the actions, putting in whatever vendor invoice info I have for them, or I can deal with that a little bit later on, even after the fact. I can add that detail as I need it. And then once I've got this all set the way I want, I've got my invoice information if I want it that way. Now I'll do the F12 post just like before. That will complete the quick receive. That will increase my on hand by the number I've got in the received field. And then that will also go back to the parent order, in this case the hold order, and mark those units as having been received, completed, totally received. If there's no other items outstanding on that open parent order, it would also close that parent order. Or if there were some other items hanging it open, it would just at least show that this particular title was totally received and that the other items are still open and waiting. But that's what the any vendor option will do, is it will let you mark items as having been received against multiple different parent POs. Now, it's important to note that this is not going to do any kind of, at least at this point in time, checking to make sure that, yes, you're receiving Macmillan for Macmillan from Ford's Books, from Holt. Wait a minute, Garfield Press is not part of Macmillan. It's not going to warn you that this is not a connected or a related vendor. So it is up to you at the store to make sure your vendor information is correct and clean, and that you are sure before you finalize the posting that these are the correct vendors and PO numbers you expect to see against this larger, in this case, Macmillan order. The last little option is another new little detail about draft book fare units and choosing to have them be included in your calculated on hold numbers. And that setting requires Tools Options area. So in Tools Options, what was previously just labeled as the CO tab for customer orders is now talking about customer orders and book fares. So you'll see that now on the bottom here is this new setting called Include Draft Book Fares in your on-hold quantities. Now that's talking about your calculated on-hold units, that maybe you've got 10 units on hand, you are about to send 6 of those to an event. You haven't quite wrapped up the box, you're not quite finalized yet, but you want to make sure your clerks are aware that, wait a minute, while we may have 10 technically on hand, 6 of those are already claimed. They're on hold. They're going to go somewhere else, and that there are 4 units available. So by checking this setting, that's equivalent to saying that now when I have a draft book fare, such as this one, the units on this particular title, if I go back to master file inventory, it's going to show that item as being on hold, included in the on hold numbers. It still knows it has an on hand of 2, but it knows that because I've chosen that setting in Tools Options now to include those book fare numbers, I'll start seeing those draft book fare numbers included in my on hold. You could still sell the title. I could still sell all 2 units and sell this through the cash register, even if I've kind of speculated that I'm going to want to count those early units as part of my on hold, but it's not going to stop me from selling it if for some reason I still need to sell what units I do have and get them out the door. Now note, there is a slight change. If you do opt to use this newer setting of including your draft book fares into your on hold quantities, that is going to shift things just a little bit. There's a warning here where essentially we're saying that because we can't know at the time of an still open receiving memo, yes, you could say send it to book fare, but unless you really final post that receiving memo, you can't be as positive about the accuracy. We want to make sure that what you say you're going to send to those book fares and what is going to be counted as part of your on hold is indeed accurate. So you're going to find, if you use this option, that going to say an open receiving memo, a still open receiving memo, that the immediate option of send to book fare is disabled in that case, but the shipment record, the after the fact, once you've posted that receiving memo, once you've indicated, yes, indeed, I do have these 5 units in hand, I received them, I've either shelved them or moved them to the back area where they're going to get packed up for that book fair, you'll see that now with this option turned on, when I go into my, say, receiving area, and I'm going to bring those titles in. Let me reopen that data here. You'll see with that draft book fair option turned on, if I am on an open receiving memo where I have not yet marked an item as received, that the actions send to book fair is dimmed out, but that's only because I'm in an open one. I haven't quite officially said, yes, indeed, I did get those 5 units. It's not until afterwards when I'm looking at, say, the historical shipment record. It's the shipment record now, once I've used that display book fair quantities as part of OnHold, it's when I get to the shipment record that actions send to book fair option comes back. And again, that's just to help ensure that your numbers are genuinely accurate, to prevent you from including items as part of your OnHold that maybe you haven't quite finalized yet. So, but that's a newer option in the tools options area under that CO tab. And as well, when you're looking at an inventory item under master file inventory, you'll notice too that the tab where we originally showed the book fair information previously didn't have any checkboxes to say, I want to see any titles that are either on open or draft book fairs. In fact, let me go grab one of those titles and you'll see what I mean here. So here's an item that is on a draft book fair. Let me find that's a real title. So I can right click and go to master files. And in the book fair tab of that inventory screen, I'll now be able to see, is that item on anything draft or open, just depending on what I'm after that day with that filter. That about covers in the second video, the different bits that we wanted to go over. There will probably be one more video, a third one, that is going to talk about a few report changes that we've made and some enhancements to the query tool. That'll be coming up in the next video. We'll see you in the next one.